Okay, Thomas is back. We have new release images, video of the Thomas 2026 television series, which is coming out this fall. So admittedly, it is a little bit of a disappointment to see that the Thomas show is going to take so long for it to come out, debut. We were hoping maybe it'd be a little bit earlier, spring or summer, but it looks like we're getting a fall season of the new Thomas show, and look, it's CGI. It's CGI right here. I mean, you can take a look at this. This is gorgeous. I mean, the CGI show was absolutely amazing. Don't get me wrong, but this is if this is what it looks like, it's taking it to a whole nother level. Now, to be fair, the engine that they were probably doing the original CGI Thomas series on was probably a little bit old. We have developments over 5 years, 5 or 6 years since the CGI show was. We had this whole All Engines Go interlude period, and quite frankly, it's good to see CGI again. Let me show you the video. Let me go and show you the video first, guys. Though let me show you what's going on here. They literally gave us a video, which is kind of amazing, of Thomas and Friends. So I want to go ahead and show you guys that if I pull it up. But you're gonna be amazed. You're gonna be amazed of what this looks like. Okay, here let me just pull this up here, and then I'll move it over here. Okay, so this is the Thomas and Friends video that they've gotten here. It is cool. I'll put my camera right down here so it doesn't interfere with the screen. There's no sound, so you're wondering like, hey, there's no sounds of this video. That's because there is no sound. It's just literally just video, right? But this is concept. This looks like a concept video of Thomas, right? He's looking at you. He winks at you. You almost expect him to say something, right? Here, I'll show it to you again. Right, there he goes. Doesn't that look great? Oh my gosh. Here, let me turn off my camera. You can see it again. Oh, that didn't work out so well. Okay. Oh wow. I wonder if we could put this on repeat. Yeah, we could probably put this on repeat, right? Yeah, that's probably it. That'll work. Okay, so let's talk about what we're looking at here. Okay? Because there's a lot that we can digest from this. Okay, first off, let's take a look at those. Let's take a look at Thomas's wheels here. Okay, so this is very realistic. Now, admittedly, Thomas is of course moving a little bit, bouncing up and down a bit, but I don't think that's too crazy, honestly. I think in CGI Thomas, you had very similar kind of movements, but it's not like All Engines Go, right? All Engines Go, the cartoon Thomas was jumping around, he was doing flips, he was going off the rails. This looks very close to what we see so far as a bit more realistic to what a steam engine would do, which would be to not jump off the rails. Now, to be fair, this is just a 6-second clip. Thomas episodes tend to be about 10 minutes long, so there's a lot that could happen. Within that period of time there. Yeah. But we're kind of curious on what happens. Now, I don't think we should assume that that's not going to be the case here, because if we're going to look at this, but if you look at some of the art from future Thomas, I think you're going to see that maybe this is not just a return to CGI. I think this is also going to take elements that they've had in All Engines Go and adapt it into this series. Now, ideally, it would be the elements that people really enjoyed and not the elements that people were really upset about, but we will have to see. CGI is back. Now, I mean, just look at this. Is gorgeous. I mean, also, let's just look at the detail here, right? Let's just pause this. Okay? Does this not look amazing? Like, I don't know about you. I remember watching, Big World, Big Adventures, and it looked good. It looked good, especially compared to early CGI Thomas, right? But it doesn't have it's not this good looking, right? There you could see a lot more of like kind of the detail on Thomas, some of his wear and tear on him. You could see some of the details of like simply the terrain around him, which is absolutely amazing. But whew. I mean, looks good. Let's look at some of the images. Yeah, the chibi version. Let's talk about that. Let's look at some of the images that they released. Okay, for All Ages Go. So here's some of the design. Here's some of the design stuff that they sort of revealed of Thomas there, right? This is a lot of it concept art combined with models here, and this is going to reveal a lot about what this show is going to be about there. Okay. So let's take a look here. Now notice how like come some of the expressions that they have here, right? These are some of the expressions that they want to depict Thomas. Here's some of the concept art. I'm thinking that Thomas is going to be a little bit more expressive than you saw in the CGI series. I really do think so, right? Especially if you like take a look like this eyes right here. like this one, right? Like he's just like big anime eyes, Oh, amazing, right? But I think that Thomas is going to be a little bit more expressive, similar to how you saw in All Ages Go. And then we got more of these different boards up here of what they were kind of talking about, where Thomas is kind of looking and reacting to different things, right? Now, not all of this is going to be used, I'm pretty sure, right? A lot of this is concept art, and concept art does not necessarily translate into actual usage in the television series, right? The rivets look like stickers. Well, this is concept art too. Right? So this is not, this looks good, but even this doesn't look kind of like what we saw, right? With Thomas in the original depiction here. Let me see if I could bring up that image, right? Like this Thomas has a little bit more detailing, right? You can see the rivets have a little bit more of a 3D texture here. Right? There's some of that dirt on Thomas right at his front, because of course the dirt is going to, when he's moving forward, the dirt's flying towards him. So of course he's going to get a little muddy. But look at this detail. It's not just flat. It's not just smooth metal, right? It looks more realistic, right? There's a little bit of fading here on the paint. There's wear and tear, right? This is something that you would normally see when a steam engine, is actually functioning. Now, to be fair, I think they've probably not made it exactly realistic. For one, I believe that Thomas is a steam engine. He runs on coal, and coal is a very dirty substance, right? So that a lot of engines would get a little bit dirtier over time, right? But I don't think that they're going to make Thomas extremely dirty as he goes about his day-to-day business without necessarily, because he's going to look good, unless the story called for it, right? Otherwise, he's just going to look pretty nice. Yeah, his design looks pretty awesome, and it looks pretty close to what we remember for Thomas. Anyway, but yeah, the concept art, right? This is sort of very an expressive kind of concept, and quite frankly, I think that means that we're going to see a little bit more of the All Engines Go style of expression. Right? In All Engines Go, Thomas was an extremely expressive engine. He's still Thomas, but like we saw him as a very cartoon version, right? And in cartoons, I feel like the tendency for a lot of these children's cartoons is to go a little bit higher in energy, a little bit higher in expression when interacting with things. And of course, that also combined with greater movement of these engines, which wasn't necessarily realistic, right? Jumping around, flipping, turning over, going off rails. Not everyone likes that. Quite frankly, and I've said this before, if they simply took All Ages Go art style but made it, realistic Thomas, where he's just like on the rails and he's just doing things, like people wouldn't have minded as much. They wouldn't have liked the cartoon because they would have at least used to the CGI, but they would have been like, okay, it's the same story, right? It's just a different format that you're seeing in, right? Sort of like when you read a book about Thomas and Friends, or you listen to a podcast from Thomas Stories. It's a different format. But you can still see Thomas in your mind, right? You can still see read the pages and see how the characters that you love, James, Henry, Gordon, Edward, are still the same, even if it's slightly different format, right? Old Age Go sort of just didn't. It was a different format, and then they, added a bunch of goofs, as some people would call it, sins or errors, as others might say. Here's an interesting thing. Let's talk about the press release. So they released a whole paper. They released a whole thing here about Thomas and Friends and the press release, and I have it here in the browser. That might be a little easier to look at here. Is here. So this is let me talk. We're gonna break down not everything in this press release, but the really important key points here that's going to tell us more about what this show is going to be about. Okay. And here's the thing. Key new design elements include lasting legacy. This is the big one. This is the absolute big one that we're going to see. Do I think that they're going to update the mobile games with the new models? No, I don't think so. I do think that if they ever release any future mobile games from this point forward, say 2026 onward, it's going to use the new models. Anything before that, they're not going to update. They're not going to update unless it happens to make them a lot of money. Lasting legacy blends classic train culture with a warm modern look, reinforcing, and this is the big part, the emotional connection families have had with Thomas for decades. That's one way of just saying nostalgia. Nostalgia. They're trying to tap into the nostalgia of Thomas and Friends, right? You growing up with Thomas, you watching the series, reading the books, that's this right here. That's this right here. The people that have grew up with Thomas, like myself, are now adults, right? I'm 38 years old. And that means that theoretically, I don't have kids, but I could have kids, right? And if I had kids, I would expose them to Thomas and Friends. Why? Because I like Thomas, right? And if they watch Thomas and I watch Thomas, we're all having fun together. But also just to to share with them a joy that I had as a child and still have, I suppose, with them. Right? And that's what they're saying here. The emotional connection families had for Thomas for decades. They're saying, hey, we get it. You guys grew up as being Thomas fans. You love Thomas the Tank Engine and Edward and Henry growing up. And we know, that All Engines Go wasn't quite scratching that itch. Right? It's cute. And I'm sure it appealed to very young kids. But it's not the Thomas we remember. It's not the Thomas the Tank Engine that we recall watching in our formative years, right? So they're saying, hey, we're gonna tap into that nostalgia, and we're going to bring Thomas back to a little bit more of what you remember, aka the CGI, right? So they're saying that's why they're saying classic train culture, emotional connection. Okay, that's the important thing, right? That's why they're saying, hey, we're gonna make it more CGI now. The big thing you got to say here is it's combining it with a warm, modern look, okay? A warm, modern look. And as we see here, that's what this Thomas looks right here. It's updated CGI, right? Where it looks a little bit more modern. It looks a little bit more advanced. And that's because computer graphics, computer generation has advanced in the last 5 or 6 years, right? We're also using they're probably using new programs to use this. So it's going to look a lot cleaner, a lot more fresh than what we were used to. And that's fine, right? It's sort of like when you get a new computer game, right? If you're playing The Sims 5, it's going to look better than The Sims 4. It's going to look better than The Sims 3. Just because the technology has gotten better over time. And that's fine. That's fine. I think everyone would be happy for this. If they did this, if they finished the old CGI series and instead of Old Engines Go, they went directly to something like this, nobody would bat an eye. Everyone would be like, oh, Thomas looks cool now, right? There would be some people that'd be upset, right? There were people that were upset when we moved from models to CGI. And that's understandable, of course. And there'll be some people that'd be upset if they moving from old CGI to new CGI. But it's sort of like going in the right direction. Now, remember, they're talking about a warm, modern look. And we talked about this earlier, right? Where they're saying he's going to be, I think, a little bit more expressive, right? His Thomas looks pretty solid all around here for like his look here. But his face is extremely not worn down, right? Everything else kind of shows like smoke and dirt and like, paint tearing off, but not his face. His face looks clean And I think that's because we're going to be using a lot of that emotional expression to move the story forward. Let's talk about some of the other key elements here that they talked about here. So obviously they're going to say something where draws inspiration from the franchise storytelling roots. So I think that means we're going to see some of the stories that we saw before, some old Thomas stories. I don't think this is a continuation of the CGI series. I really don't think so. I think this is a reboot, and I think that they're going to try and tell some of the stories they had before, some of the good stories, right? And we all have favorites. We have all favorites. Henry's Forest or Edward pushing Gordon up the hill. Those are all amazing, fun stories that we love. And I think they're going to probably do some of those stories again, but maybe with a more modern storytelling tradition, right? A more modern storytelling method. So yeah, but they're going to have, and timeless train traditions, I think that's just saying that they're going to try and make it a little bit more realistic in regards to railroads and trains, right? And that's going to make sense. Thomas the Tank Engine is a steam engine. You know, it's all about trains. You know, they shouldn't move away from that. If they release a story where like, hey, it's Thomas and friends, but they all go to school, it's like, well, I mean, school episodes, you know, there's a lot of children's episodes about going to school, but Thomas is not a child in a kindergarten. It wouldn't make sense, right? So that's good. They say they're focusing on timeless train traditions. That's a good sign. That's a good sign, right? Offers refined contemporary details that maintain familiar and recognizable features. So that's good. I think that's just kind of corporate, you know, PR speak, saying like you'll recognize it. I like this. Emphasizes warmth, authenticity, and dependability for today's families, right? So they're saying we want to tell stories that are going to be meaningful, that are going to touch you, you know, that are going to resonate with you, right? Henry's Forest is a good example. That story resonated with you. It resonated with Henry, resonated with you, because these are steam engines, but they're also beings that you can relate to, right? You could put yourself in Thomas's, I was going to say putting yourself in Thomas's shoes, but that doesn't quite make sense. You could put yourself in Thomas's wheels and be able to say like, oh yeah, if I were Thomas, I would feel sad, or I'd be upset, or I'd be happy in that situation, right? And when Thomas went fishing for fish, and when Thomas needed water and had a fish in his boiler, and he felt really bad, he'd be like, well, I've never had a fish in my boiler, but I have had an upset stomach, and I know what that feels like, and that's not it's not good, right? So you could relate to Thomas. You could relate to Thomas to an extent. And I think that they're going to kind of emphasize that. Here's what Ted Wu says. And this guy is the senior vice president and global head of vehicles and building sets at Mattel. He said, Thomas has been a trusted companion for families for more than 80 years. And the new look reflects both where the brand comes from and where it's headed in its next adventure. We return to the elements that parents and kids love most, right? That's the nostalgia again, while updating the design to feel relevant for today's preschool audience. That's like saying they're modernizing, they're using new technology. Authentic train details, that's important. that's different than All Engines Go. Timelessness and emotional storytelling form the foundation for the years ahead for Thomas and friends. I think they're basically saying, hey, you know what? All Engines Go went a little bit too far away from being not, you know, realistic, and we want to kind of come back to it. Now, I don't think that they're going to go away from that. All Engines Go had some amazing details. They had a great music. If you look and listen to the background music in All Engines Go, it's phenomenal. It is very solid. They introduced I was gonna say new characters. I'm trying to think if they introduced a lot of new characters. They have Kana. I'm trying to think if it's more than one. I would probably have. I just can't think of it at the moment. But Kana was great. I wrote to bring Kana back. I liked Kana. I liked her enthusiasm and the fact that she's a Shinkansen, right? She's a bullet train, and so obviously that adds another type of engine to the railroad. Some of the elements that she had about like charging didn't quite make sense, but it was amazing to have something else, you know, because we like the fact. Yeah, there's multiple engines on the Isle of Sodor, right? Like, it's not just Thomas is the main character. Like, he is literally the face of the franchise. But that doesn't mean we also don't like Mavis. We don't like Cranky the Crane. we don't like Annie and Clarabelle. No, we like them. We love them, right? They're not steam engines, right? But they're fun characters. They're fun depictions of engines. Or even, you know, coaches, I suppose, that would exist on a railroad that we appreciate. We appreciate it. I mean, Cranky the Crane's funny. That guy's hilarious. And we need more Cranky, honestly. We absolutely need more Cranky. I don't care what anyone says. Cranky is just absolutely funny whenever he interacts with everyone. Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, I do think Bruno's going to return. I'm honestly looking forward to some of the original Steam team, right? I'm looking for my favorite number 2 Edward. I'm saying like, come on, bring back Edward. But we're probably going to see some of the characters that you saw in All Engines Go, prominently as well, that are going to come back. We're probably going to see Gordon. He was very prominent in CGI. He was prominent in All Engines Go. You're probably going to see Gordon again. You're going to probably see Percy because he's Thomas's best friend. You're going to see Thomas, of course. I think you're probably going to see Nia. Nia has become a lot more prominent of a character in the last few years, especially in All Engines Go. So I definitely think they're going to bring Nia back into the show in some format. I'm kind of curious if we're going to the style of storytelling where they're going to depict a lot of different stories, focusing on different engines. Instead of focusing on a main cast. Because in All Engines Go, right, it was all Thomas, Kana, Nia, Percy, Diesel. Oh, and they'll bring back Diesel. Whether or not Diesel is a good guy or a bad guy or, sort of somewhere in between remains to be seen, but we're going to see Diesel, right? Yeah, well, some of these other characters like Oliver and Scruffy are pretty awesome, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they might be as in the focus in this new show as we go along. Quite frankly, the show is going to debut in the fall, right? So at earliest September 2026, and maybe not even September, maybe October, maybe even November, right? Beyond that, we start getting into the winter, and it's very possible that the show gets delayed, right? So they're making the stories right now, right? All the stories that they're doing for Thomas, they're making right now in preparation for the fall. So, but they may not necessarily know who they're going to focus on yet, right? This is just the beginning of the show, right? This is all new, and they're going to try to feel their way through what people are going to resonate with. So we'll see. Let me show you what here's an interesting here's a thing that you're going to find funny. I think this was funny. So see, we have an evolution timeline here, right? Here's a timeline of Thomas and friends, right? They say we get started in 1945, the Railway series by Reverend Audrey. Then it goes to the 1984, the live action Thomas and Friends. This is the classic, first episodes. Thomas is quite a cheeky little engine. We got CGI, which they say is 2010. Okay. And then 2021, we go to the animated Thomas and Friends television series. They say 2D here. They don't say call it All Engines Go. They want to just say it's 2D. And then they call this the brand new look of the franchise. The brand new look. They're not saying it's CGI, though it's clearly CGI, but they're calling it brand new look. And the reason why they call it brand new look is because they don't want to say CGI, animation, CGI, right? They don't want to say oh, we really messed up with All Engines Go, and we're going back to CGI. They're not gonna say that. Even if they believed it, which I don't necessarily think they believe, they're not going to admit that they made a mistake. They're not going to say hey, All Engines Go was a great experiment, but we understand that CGI is kind of where it's at for this franchise. I don't think, like I said, I don't think the cartoon aspect was the problem. The art style wasn't the problem. It was the way they were using the art style that was the problem. If it was Thomas, but it was realistic and Thomas was on tracks and there was no jumping around, people would be fine with it. People would be fine with it, right? We were fine with the Railway series books, right? The Railway series books are, for lack of a better term, very, very still cartoons, right? It's drawn art that isn't moving, right? What is cartoons? Cartoons are drawn art that is moving, although nowadays it's more computer generated. So if we're fine with the books, we would have been fine with the cartoon, but the books are realistic, and the cartoon All Engines Go is not. So I think that they needed to rebrand because people were upset about that, and also it wasn't tapping into the cartoon wasn't tapping into the nostalgia that they were looking for, and that's why they're doing with the brand new look for the franchise. So that's fun. But they also updated the logo in case you wanted to see that. Here, I'll just bring that up here. That's the new logo. Thomas and Friends. It looks fine. I don't think I mind that too much. It's the same kind of cloud. Instead of it sort of being straight, and now I've got it a little bit arched. But it's a nice logo. It's a nice logo. I don't mind so much. This face here that they kind of use here with this sort of hyper realistic Thomas looking, I don't think this is what you're actually going to see. This is sort of just a placeholder art, and there's a little bit of an uncanny valley I kind of feel with this version of Thomas, as opposed to what we see later. What we see later with this Thomas, right? This Thomas looks a little bit better, right? I don't know if I could place exactly the difference between these two Thomases, you know, in terms of like what makes it different. I suspect that maybe it's a little bit of the way his face is kind of shaped and designed, but there's clearly a difference between this face and this face, right? And I don't think that this is just hey, this is what Thomas should look like, you know, concept art, and then this is like, no, this is what Thomas actually looks like, you know, now that we're starting to model the series, now we're starting to develop the series. Yeah, logo's something we'll have to get used to. We'll have to get used to all the logos and such. So that's quite interesting. What we're seeing here. Oh man, let's go back to the press release. Okay, so they just talk a lot about refreshing the design, but stay true to Thomas's core. Here's the thing that I want to emphasize. It says, in testing with preschoolers and their parents, ranked highest in appeal, personality, and emotional connection. Okay, so they're testing it with preschoolers. So this new series isn't gonna be geared towards older audiences. So people like you or me, we may not necessarily be the target audience. We're still kind of the target audience because we like Thomas, and for some of us, we're the age of parents, or we may have kids, but most of us are not going to be the type of people that they're trying to design this Thomas for. So be prepared, my friends. Be prepared for Thomas to be a little bit on the childish side. I truly think that the kind of stories that you saw in All Engines Go might also be the stories that you saw in this new series. You might see in this new series. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Some of those stories in All Engines Go can be really heartwarming, and really, really touching stories, but they may not necessarily be, you know, appeal to you if you are, you know, older than, you know, 8. So just wanted to let you know. Still, they are going to try to appeal for the emotional connection. That's nostalgia. So if they are going to do some of these old stories again from before, then maybe if they keep kind of close to what we saw before, we'll appreciate it, right? If you just saw a classic Thomas episode, right? You know, when Thomas goes fishing, but it was in this style, you wouldn't mind so much, right? It'd be like, oh, okay, it's sort of like seeing the same story, but, you know, updated art. Right? It'd be neat to see that, actually. You probably would see more details of the fish, which would be kind of cool. I'd definitely interested in seeing holes in the bucket. But nostalgia, right? Also, personality is an interesting one. So we haven't, with the video, we haven't seen Thomas's personality all that much. He kind of, you know, he's smiling and he winks at you, but I don't think we don't know what kind of personality is much. It'd be interesting to talk with some of these parents and preschoolers who have watched the pilot episode that they're testing with, but I think they've obviously signed non-disclosure agreements, and therefore we cannot talk with them, or at least they can't talk with us without being in violation of those agreements. So, but the real sad thing though is fall. Excuse me, full franchise relaunch rolling out this fall. So it's gonna take some time. It's gonna take some time. I don't know when in fall. We'll probably get some more information, some more of the characters being revealed, but it's still pretty cool. Still pretty cool. That at least we have a time now, right? The last time we were like, well, vaguely in 2026, they weren't telling us anything. I don't know if this is the longest gap we've had between not having a Thomas episode, but it feels long to me. It feels extremely long to me. So who knows? one more thing that I want to talk about, and this is going to be, this relates to sort of the rollout here. Do they actually not say this in here? There it is, right there, right? So the franchise will roll out additional announcements throughout 2026. We already know that. But with live experiences, I'm like, okay, what's that mean? What are these live experiences that we're going to that are going to be announcements? Are they just going to go to like, trade shows and announce things, or is it going to be something that we, as viewers, can interact with to experience the new Thomas? I don't know about you guys, but there are events across the United States called A Day Out with Thomas, where you can go and ride coaches pulled by Thomas and Percy, or Percy. And then, of course, there's also a lot of other fun little interactive games and activities. They're mostly designed for kids, although it is pretty cool to ride in a train pulled by Thomas. I'm kind of curious if there might be something related to that they might be using to try and promote things. My guess is more like trade show announcements, but hopefully something more. Products, of course, that's the toys. Thomas is here to sell toys for Mattel. That's not surprising for me. And then, of course, publishing and content. So that's it. That's the announcement. Mattel is letting us know, hey, Thomas is coming out. We got some pretty cool stuff here. and pardon me. And it's going to be new. It's going to be absolutely new. I mean, this is Thomas here, guys. This is the future. And quite frankly, I think that they're going to give this at least a few years. For those of you who are saying like, hey, how long is this going to last? How much are we going to invest in here? Olin Just Go, they gave 5 years. They gave Olin Just Go 5 years, a lot of episodes, right? They're going to give this new Thomas at least 5 years. My guess is if it does really well because it's CGI and it's updated and new, they're going to give it more than that. They're going to probably give it, you can't really predict that at that point. I suspect that, Brandon, that you're right, that they are going to be voiced by children again. I think this new branding is a combination of CGI and Olin Just Go. It's going to have the look and the more realism of CGI, where they're going to say like, hey, Thomas is a steam engine, he's a train, he's going to run on tracks, he's not going to flip. But I think the storytelling, I think the engagement is definitely going to be more of the younger side of things. So childlike voices, some of the stories might not be as deep as you might hope, and it's going to appeal to preschoolers. So I think that's what you're going to be seeing with Thomas and Friends, is that it's going to be the level of storytelling is going to be geared towards younger audiences, but the depiction is going to be more realistic, like CGI. So you're going to see elements of both series combined into this brand new Thomas. Whether or not you like that, I guess it remains to be seen. Honestly, if it's on a more child-based level, if the stories are good, I'm gonna like it. I'm absolutely going to like it, because if it touches my heart, right? If I feel connected to the stories that Thomas and his friends go through, I'm going to enjoy it. And I think, quite frankly, all of us are going to enjoy it if they do it that way, right? If they make it so that you feel a connection with these characters, with these engines, we're all gonna love it, and we will forgive any other flaws it might have. No show is perfect. I don't think there's any show in the world that is absolutely perfect. Although, if I'm wrong, you feel free to correct me. But I think that the fact that we're seeing a CGI look, that they're talking about nostalgic, they're talking about how they want to be a modern look, but was talking about the storytelling from the past and pulling on iconic stories from Thomas's franchise and doing things that are very train related, in that, things that they're saying in the press release. I mean, sure, it's all PR, but it sounds like they're heading in the right direction to me. Right? It sounds like they understand what the core of Thomas is. Thomas is about a steam engine and his friends on a railroad doing train-based things that also have stories that we can relate to, characters that we can, become fond of, and adversity that we're just, cheering for them to overcome, right? they understand. I think from this press release, it sounds like they understand what the core of Thomas is. It's not just, hey, Thomas is a train. I mean, he's a steam engine, but you know what I mean, right? This is not like, brain dead. Thomas is a train, everyone just likes train things. As long as we have a steam engine and we put him wherever he is, he's gonna be fine. No, that's not how that works. That's not how kids understand trains. Whenever we see trains in real life, they're on a track. So Thomas should be on the track. Unless he's getting repaired, in which case it doesn't have to be a track. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited for what this is going to happen. I don't know what you guys think, but if you guys have any of your thoughts, just leave it in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you think this, if you're optimistic, if you're pessimistic, if you're like, Kevin, they messed up Thomas, they're gonna mess up Thomas again, let me know. I'm very curious to see what happens. I'm going to see what else kind of information we could kind of dig around from this press release and anything else they might release in the near future. So just kind of stay tuned for that. And of course, I will continue to release other episodes about Olin's Go. But let me know your thoughts. And thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. And wow, this is exciting. Look at that. Look at that. He's just chugging along. The grass looks beautiful. Thomas looks beautiful. I think we're in for